The clatter of plates and silverware echoed through the kitchen of Bellissimo, each crash making me wince. 6 hours into my shift, my lower back throbbed with a dull ache that radiated down to my swollen ankles. I adjusted my waitress uniform for the 100th time, trying to conceal the small bump that had begun to show beneath the black fabric. 4 months pregnant and barely keeping my head above water. Table 7 needs water refills, and the couple at 9 just arrived. VIPs, according to Marco, Sophia whispered, brushing past me with a tray balanced on her palm. I nodded, grateful for the distraction from the nausea that had been my constant companion. The elegant dining room of Bellissimo was a far cry from the life I'd known just months ago, designer dresses, private jets, and a penthouse overlooking the city. Now, I wore sensible shoes that pinched my feet and counted tips at the end of each shift, praying there would be enough for next month's rent. Alessa, are you listening? Table 9. Don't keep them waiting, Marco, the floor manager, hissed. His eyes flickered to my midsection before he turned away, his disapproval evident in the tightness of his shoulders. I smoothed down my apron and grabbed 2 leather-bound menus, pushing through the swinging door into the dining room. The chandeliers cast a warm glow over the white tablecloths and polished silverware. I inhaled deeply, centering myself as I'd learned to do since everything fell apart. Table 9 was positioned in the far corner, partially obscured by a decorative column. The best seat in the house, reserved for those who could afford privacy. I approached with my gaze lowered, the way I'd been instructed when serving important guests. Good evening and welcome to Bellissimo. May I offer you our wine list to start? The rehearsed greeting died on my lips as I looked up. Time seemed to stretch and contract all at once, the air crystallized in my lungs. Sitting there, his broad shoulders draped in a tailored charcoal suit that I remembered selecting with him at his favorite atelier, was Viktor Sokolov, my husband, my ex-husband, the father of the child I carried, the man who had discarded me like yesterday's newspaper when I needed him most, and across from him, draped in a crimson dress that clung to her perfect figure, sat a woman I'd never seen before. Her fingers, adorned with a diamond that caught the light and scattered it like shattered glass, were entwined with his. The same fingers that had once traced patterns on my skin in the dark. Victor hadn't noticed me yet, his attention fixed on the woman whose smile revealed perfect white teeth. She laughed at something he said, the sound like tinkling crystal. I stood frozen, menus clutched to my chest as the room began to spin around me. I was thinking we could do Venice for the honeymoon, I heard him say, his Russian accent wrapping around the words the way it used to wrap around my name. Private villa on the canal. You'll love it. Honeymoon. The word pierced through me like a blade. I should have backed away. Should have asked another server to take the table. Should have hidden in the bathroom until my shift ended. But my feet remained rooted to the plush carpet, my body betraying me as it had been doing for months now, with its changing shape and unpredictable reactions. Excuse me? Are you going to take our order or just stand there? The woman's voice cut through my paralysis, impatient and entitled. Victor looked up then, his steel-gray eyes meeting mine. For a moment there was nothing, no recognition, no reaction. Just the cool assessment he gave to strangers. Then his pupils dilated, and the color drained from his face. Alessa. My name on his lips still had the power to send a shiver down my spine. Not of desire, but of terror, because I knew what Victor was capable of when he felt cornered. I'll get another server for your table, I managed to whisper, already backing away, my hand instinctively moving to shield my stomach. His gaze followed the movement, understanding dawning in those cold eyes. He half rose from his chair, but I was already turning, walking as quickly as I could without breaking into a run. Who was that? I heard the woman ask, her voice carrying across the sudden hush that had fallen over our corner of the restaurant. I didn't hear his response. Blood pounded in my ears as I pushed through the kitchen doors, gasping for air that wouldn't come. The memories I'd fought to suppress came rushing back. The argument, the accusations, the night I'd fled our home with nothing but the clothes on my back after discovering what kind of man I'd really married. Alessa? What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost. Sophia's concerned face swam before me. I need to leave. Now. My voice sounded distant, as though it belonged to someone else. You can't just leave in the middle of a shift. Marco will fire you and you need this job. Her eyes widened as she glanced toward the dining room. Wait, do you know who's at table 9? That's Viktor Sokolov. Nobody crosses him in this city, as if I needed the reminder. He's my ex-husband, I whispered, the words bitter on my tongue. And he doesn't know about the baby. Sophia's face paled. Holy shit. The Viktor Sokolov? The one they call the ghost? I nodded, fighting the urge to vomit. Everyone in the city knew of Viktor, though few had seen him. He operated in shadows, his influence extending into every corrupt corner of power. I had been young and naive when we met, dazzled by his charm and the intensity of his attention. By the time I discovered the truth about his business, the violence, the illegal operations, the blood on his hands, I was already his wife, already trapped. You need to get out of here, Sophia hissed, gripping my arm. If he's here with another woman... His fiancée, I corrected, the word like acid in my mouth. They're planning their honeymoon. A commotion from the dining room made us both freeze. The kitchen door swung open, and Marco appeared, his face contorted with a mixture of fear and anger. Mr. Sokolov wants to see you, Alessa. Now. I can't. Panic clawed at my throat. I need to go home. I'm not feeling well. Marco stepped closer, lowering his voice. Listen to me. That man owns half the judges and police chiefs in this city. If he wants to talk to you, you talk to him. I don't know what's between you two, and I don't want to know. But you don't say no to a man like that. I knew he was right. Running would only delay the inevitable. Viktor had found me. Whether by cruel coincidence or deliberate tracking, it didn't matter. He knew where I worked now, knew I was pregnant. The fragile new life I'd been building was about to shatter. I'll go, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. But not to the table. Tell him I'll meet him in your office. Marco hesitated, then nodded. 5 minutes. And Alessa, whatever he wants, just give it to him. People who cross Viktor Sokolov have a habit of disappearing, as if I needed that reminder either. I made my way to the small office at the back of the restaurant, my legs trembling beneath me. The room was barely larger than a closet, with a desk cluttered with invoices and scheduling sheets. I sank into the chair, trying to calm my racing heart for the baby's sake. The door opened less than a minute later. Viktor filled the frame, his presence consuming the oxygen in the room. He closed the door behind him with a soft click that somehow sounded more threatening than a slam. My Alyosha, he said softly, using the pet name that had once made me melt. Now it made my skin crawl. You've been hiding from me. Don't call me that, I whispered. And I haven't been hiding. I left. There's a difference. He moved closer, and I caught his scent. Expensive cologne with notes of cedar and bergamot, the same cologne I'd given him for his birthday last year. Before I knew what he really was, before I found the blood-stained shirt he'd tried to hide from me, before I overheard the phone call about the man who needed to be taken care of. You look different, he observed, his gaze traveling over me, lingering on my stomach. How far along? I swallowed hard. 4 months. Something flickered in his eyes, possession, calculation, fury. With Viktor, it was impossible to tell. His emotions were always carefully controlled, part of what made him so dangerous. Mine? He asked, though it wasn't really a question. Does it matter? I countered, finding a shred of defiance. You've moved on. Quite quickly, I might add. His jaw tightened, the only indication that my words had hit their mark. You left me, Alessa, in the middle of the night, like a thief. What did you expect? I expected you to let me go, I said, meeting his gaze despite the fear coiling in my stomach. I know what you are, Viktor, what you do. I want no part of it. He smiled then, a predator's smile that never reached his eyes. And yet, here you are, carrying my child, my heir. The possessiveness in his voice made me shiver. I'd seen how Viktor viewed people as possessions, things to be owned, controlled, discarded when they no longer served a purpose. I refused to let my child become another piece in his empire of blood and fear. I didn't know I was pregnant when I left, I admitted. And it changes nothing. Viktor moved suddenly, his hands coming to rest on the arms of my chair, caging me in. His face was inches from mine, his breath warm against my skin. It changes everything, Alyosha. Everything. His voice was a dangerous whisper. You're carrying a Sokolov, my blood. Did you think I would allow my child to be raised by a waitress, to grow up in some shabby apartment, never knowing their birthright? I turned my face away, unable to bear his proximity. Better that than knowing their father is a monster. His hand shot out, gripping my chin and forcing me to look at him. There was no violence in the touch, but the threat of it hung in the air between us. You knew exactly who I was when you married me, he said, his voice eerily calm. You enjoyed the benefits of my work well enough. The jewelry, the vacations, the lifestyle. You never questioned where the money came from until it suited you to develop a conscience. The accusations stung, because there was a grain of truth to it. I had suspected Victor's business wasn't entirely legitimate, but I'd chosen not to look too closely. I'd been young, infatuated, and willfully blind. I was naive, I admitted. But I'm not anymore. Please, Victor, just let me go. Let us go. Something dangerous flashed in his eyes. Never. The word was final, absolute. You are mine, Alessa. You will always be mine. And now... His gaze dropped to my stomach. Now there are two of you that belong to me. The door opened suddenly, and we both turned to see the woman in the red dress standing there, her perfect features arranged in an expression of confused irritation. Victor? What's going on? Why did you leave in the middle of dinner? Her gaze slid to me, taking in my waitress uniform, my disheveled appearance. Who is this? Victor straightened, his mask of control slipping back into place with frightening ease, but he didn't move away from me, his body still positioned possessively. Katrina, this is Alessa, he said smoothly. My wife. Her perfectly sculpted eyebrows shot up. Ex-wife, she corrected, her voice tight. You told me you were divorced. The paperwork is... ongoing, Victor replied, his gaze never leaving my face. And the baby? Katrina asked, her eyes narrowing as she took in my condition. The tension in the room thickened until it was hard to breathe. I looked between them, the powerful man I had once loved and now feared, and the woman who had unwittingly stepped into the dangerous role I had fled. Congratulations, I said to her, finding my voice at last. He failed to mention his pregnant ex-wife would be your server tonight. I wonder what else he's failed to mention. Victor's eyes darkened with warning, but I was beyond caring. Whatever tenuous safety I had found was already compromised. Whatever happened next would change everything. Again, the only difference was that this time, I wasn't just fighting for myself. The silence that followed my words seemed to stretch into eternity. Katrina's perfect features contorted with shock, then fury. She turned to Victor, her diamond ring catching the light as she pointed an accusatory finger at him. You told me she left you over a year ago, that there was no child, that you were free to marry. Each sentence emerged like the crack of a whip. Is that... Her gaze fixed on my stomach, then back to Victor's impassive face. Is that your baby? I watched Victor, curious despite my fear to see how he would handle being caught between his lies. This man who controlled everything, who tolerated no defiance, now cornered by the simple truth. Katrina, he said, his voice controlled but with an edge I recognized, the warning tone that preceded his worst fury. Wait for me in the car. Dmitri will take you. I'm not going anywhere until you explain this. Her voice rose, and I saw Marco hovering anxiously in the doorway behind her. The last thing he wanted was a scene involving Viktor Sokolov. Miss, Marco interjected cautiously, perhaps we could offer you a complimentary dessert at your table while Mr. Sokolov finishes his... business? The look she gave him could have frozen hell. You think I want dessert? When I just found out my fiancé has a pregnant wife? Ex-wife, I corrected quietly, though it felt hollow even to my ears. The papers Victor had mentioned were a fiction. I had fled, but I had never filed for divorce, too afraid that any legal proceeding would lead him straight to me. Victor moved with the fluid grace that had always reminded me of a predator. In 2 strides, He was beside Katrina, his hand at the small of her back, possessive, controlling, but appearing merely solicitous to anyone watching. "We will discuss this at home," he murmured. But even from across the room I could hear the steel beneath the velvet. "This is not the place." For a moment, I thought she would resist. Then I saw the calculation in her eyes, the weighing of options, the recognition of how little power she actually wielded in this moment. It was a look I knew intimately. "Fine," she said, her voice brittle. "But this conversation isn't over." As Victor guided her toward the door, he glanced back at me over his shoulder. "Don't move," he ordered, quiet enough that only I could hear. "I'll be right back." The threat was implicit. I knew Victor's men would be watching the exits now, knew that running would only postpone the inevitable, but every instinct screamed at me to flee. Marco remained in the doorway, fidgeting with his tie. "Alessa, I don't know what's happening, but I think you should go home. Take the rest of the night off." I shook my head, rising from the chair on unsteady legs. "He'll just follow me there. I need to think." My mind raced through options. My apartment wasn't safe. It would be the first place Victor would look. I had no family in the city, no close friends except Sophia. My savings were minimal, barely enough for next month's rent, let alone starting over somewhere new. "There's a back exit through the wine cellar," Marco said, lowering his voice. "My cousin has a cabin upstate. You could stay there for a few days, figure things out." I stared at him, surprised by the offer of help. "Why would you do that for me?" He shifted uncomfortably. "I had a sister once. Her husband was like him, powerful, connected, dangerous. She tried to leave." His eyes darkened with old pain. "She didn't make it." A chill ran down my spine. I had known what Victor was capable of, but had always believed his promise that he would never hurt me. Now, with the baby, with the evidence of his lies to Katrina, I wasn't sure of anything. "Thank you," I whispered. Marco nodded. "Go to the kitchen. Ask for Paolo. Tell him I said to show you the Barolo collection. He'll understand." He hesitated, then added, "And Alessa, don't ever come back here, for your sake, and for the baby's." I gathered my purse from my locker, my movements mechanical as shock began to settle into my system. The kitchen was a blur of activity, the staff avoiding my gaze. News traveled fast, and no one wanted to be seen associating with the woman who had angered Viktor Sokolov. I found Paolo, a heavy-set man with kind eyes, chopping vegetables near the back of the kitchen. When I relayed Marco's message, his expression grew grave. "Follow me," he said, wiping his hands on his apron. "And stay close." He led me through the chaotic kitchen to a nondescript door that I had always assumed was a pantry. Beyond it, a narrow staircase descended into darkness. Paolo flicked on a light, revealing walls lined with wine racks. "The exit is through there," he said, pointing to a metal door at the far end. "It leads to the alley behind the restaurant. Turn left, walk 3 blocks, then right on Maple Street. There's a bus stop. The number 17 will take you to the transit center." I nodded, memorizing the directions. "Thank you." Paolo's expression softened. "I have a daughter about your age. If she were in trouble—" He didn't finish the thought. "Go. Now." I hurried through the cellar, the chill of the underground space raising goosebumps on my arms. My hands trembled as I pushed open the heavy metal door, bracing myself for the possibility of finding one of Victor's men waiting. The alley was empty, dimly lit by a single flickering lamp. Rain had begun to fall, a fine mist that beaded on my hair and soaked quickly through my thin uniform. I turned left as instructed, walking as quickly as my condition allowed, constantly glancing over my shoulder. 3 blocks. Right on Maple. Bus stop. The directions played on loop in my head, a lifeline to cling to in the midst of panic. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Once, twice, 3 times. I ignored it, knowing it could only be Victor. He would have returned to Marco's office by now, discovered my absence, unleashed his fury on anyone nearby. The bus stop came into view, a small shelter offering protection from the increasingly heavy rain. I checked the schedule with shaking hands. 15 minutes until the next bus. Too long. Far too long to be exposed. Headlights swept the street behind me. I pressed myself deeper into the shadows of the shelter, heart hammering against my ribs. A sleek black Bentley crawled past, moving at a predatory pace. Even through the tinted windows, I could feel eyes scanning the surroundings. One of Victor's cars. They were already searching. The bus wouldn't arrive in time, and even if it did, where would I go? Victor owned this city, its officials, its police, its judges. There was nowhere in the metropolitan area that would be safe. I stepped back out into the rain, abandoning the bus stop and darting down a narrow side street. The Bentley would circle back soon. I needed to disappear, to find shelter, to think. My feet carried me toward the only place I could think of, St. Michael's Church, a small parish 3 blocks away. I had attended services there occasionally since leaving Victor, finding comfort in the anonymity of the congregation, the peaceful silence of the old stone building. The church was dark when I arrived, but the side door was unlocked as it always was. I slipped inside, the familiar scent of incense and old wood enveloping me. Water dripped from my hair and clothes onto the worn stone floor as I made my way to a pew near the back, collapsing onto the hard wooden seat. My hand moved instinctively to my stomach, a protective gesture that had become habit. "I'm sorry," I whispered to the tiny life within me. "I'm so sorry for all of this." Footsteps echoed in the quiet space, and I tensed, ready to flee again. But it was only Father Thomas, his weathered face concerned as he approached. "Alessa? Is everything all right?" He took in my soaked appearance, my waitress uniform, the fear that must have been evident in my expression. "I need help," I admitted, the words catching in my throat. "I'm in trouble." He sat beside me, his presence calm and steadying. "What kind of trouble, my child?" How could I explain? That I had married a monster, that I was carrying his child, that he would never let me go, never allow his heir to be raised away from his influence and control. "My husband," I began, then corrected myself. "My ex-husband. He found me tonight. He's not a good man, Father. He's dangerous. And now he knows about the baby." My hand tightened protectively over my abdomen. "He'll never let us go." Father Thomas's expression remained composed, but I saw understanding dawn in his eyes. He had been in this parish for decades. He knew the whispered names of those who controlled the city's shadows. "You need somewhere safe to stay," he said simply. "Somewhere he won't think to look." I nodded, relief washing over me at being understood without having to explain further. "There's a women's shelter in Riverside," he continued. "They have experience with situations like yours. I can make a call. He'll find me," I whispered. "Victor has connections everywhere. And when he finds me, anyone who helped me will suffer." At the mention of Victor's name, Father Thomas's eyes widened slightly, the only indication that he recognized it. "Victor Sokolov?" he asked, his voice carefully neutral. I nodded, shame washing over me. What had I been thinking, marrying such a man? Had I been so blinded by his charm, his intensity, his lavish displays of affection, that I had ignored all the warning signs? "I see." Father Thomas was quiet for a long moment. "In that case, we need to think beyond the city. I have a sister in Montana. She runs a ranch, very isolated. No one would think to look for you there. Montana, thousands of miles away. A place where Victor's influence wouldn't reach, where I could have my baby in peace, where we might actually be safe." The possibility was dizzying. "I have no money," I admitted. "Just what I've saved from tips. It's not enough for a bus ticket, let alone starting over." "The church has funds for emergencies," Father Thomas said firmly. "And this qualifies." My phone buzzed again, insistent. With trembling fingers, I finally pulled it out. 12 missed calls from Victor, 3 voicemails, and a text that made my blood run cold. "I know where you are, Alyosha. You can't hide from me. Come home now, and I'll forgive this little indiscretion. Make me hunt you, and you won't like the consequences." How could he know? Had someone at the restaurant told him? Was I being followed even now? I showed Father Thomas the message, panic rising in my throat. "He's bluffing," the priest said, but uncertainty tinged his voice. "He can't possibly know you're here." The heavy wooden doors at the entrance of the church swung open, the sound echoing through the cavernous space. Victor walked in, flanked by 2 of his men, Dmitri, his driver and bodyguard, and Alexei, whose specific duties I had never wanted to know. Their footsteps were measured, unhurried, as they advanced down the central aisle. Victor's expression was calm, almost pleasant, but I knew better. The colder his demeanor, the more dangerous his rage. "Alyosha," he called, his voice echoing off the stone walls. "Enough games. It's time to come home." Father Thomas rose, positioning himself between me and Victor. "This is a house of God, Mr. Sokolov. I must ask you to respect its sanctity." Victor's smile never reached his eyes. "I have great respect for the church, Father. I donate generously to many parishes. But my wife is unwell. Pregnant women can be emotionally unstable. I'm simply here to take her home where she belongs." "The young lady doesn't appear to want to go with you," Father Thomas replied, his voice steady despite the palpable threat emanating from Victor and his men. Victor's gaze hardened. "With all due respect, Father, this is between me and my wife." "Ex-wife," I whispered. Rising from the pew on shaky legs, "I left you, Victor. I'm not coming back." His focus shifted to me, and I fought the urge to shrink back from the intensity of his stare. "You are carrying my child," he said, each word precise and deadly. "My heir. The continuation of my bloodline. Did you think I would allow you to take that from me?" "The baby isn't a possession," I countered, finding strength in defending not just myself, but the innocent life within me, "and neither am I." Victor's face remained impassive, but I saw the muscle in his jaw tighten, a telltale sign of his restraint slipping. "We will discuss this at home. Not here." "I don't have a home with you anymore," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. "Please, just let me go. Let us both go." For a moment, I thought I saw something flicker in his eyes. Not warmth exactly, but perhaps a shadow of the man I had once believed him to be. Then it was gone, replaced by cold determination. "Dmitri," he said, not taking his eyes off me, "escort my wife to the car." The burly man moved forward, and Father Thomas stepped more firmly into his path. "I cannot allow you to force this young woman to go anywhere against her will." Victor sighed, as though dealing with a particularly stubborn child. "Father, I admire your commitment to your flock, but you're interfering in matters you don't understand." "I understand enough," the priest replied. "I understand that Alessa fears for her safety and the safety of her child. As a man of faith, I cannot in good conscience." Victor raised a hand, cutting him off. "Your conscience is not my concern. My family is. Alessa and my unborn child are coming home with me tonight." He turned to me, his tone softening just slightly. "Alyosha, don't make this more difficult than it needs to be. Think of the baby. Think of the stress you're causing yourself. It can't be good for our child." The manipulation was so transparent, yet still effective. I did worry about the baby, about the adrenaline coursing through my system, the fear and stress that had become my constant companions. "If you truly care about this baby," I said, meeting his gaze, "you'll let me go somewhere peaceful to carry it to term, away from all of this." I gestured vaguely, encompassing not just the current standoff, but the entirety of Victor's world. The violence, the danger, the constant fear. "Peaceful?" Victor's laugh was humorless. "You think you'd find peace running from me? I would search for you until my dying breath, Alessa. There is nowhere on this earth you could hide that I wouldn't eventually find you." His voice dropped, becoming almost tender. "Save us both the pain. Come home." "It's not home anymore," I whispered, tears finally spilling onto my cheeks. "It's a prison." Something dangerous flashed in Victor's eyes. He turned to Father Thomas, his voice deceptively calm. "Father, I've respected the sanctity of your church thus far, but my patience is wearing thin. I will be leaving with my wife and unborn child tonight. The only question is whether you'll be leaving with your dignity intact." The priest paled but stood his ground. "Are you threatening me, Mr. Sokolov?" Victor smiled, a predator's smile. "I don't make threats, Father. I make promises." The tension in the church was suffocating. I looked at Father Thomas, at the two men flanking Victor, at the exits that were now blocked. There was no escape. "Not tonight." "It's okay," I said to Father Thomas, my voice resigned. I'll go. Alessa, you don't have to. Yes, I interrupted, I do. I turned to Victor, summoning what little courage I had left. I'll come with you tonight. But this isn't over. I won't live in fear, not for me, and not for our child. Victor's expression softened minutely, satisfaction evident in the slight upward curve of his lips. Of course not, Alyosha. Once we're home, we'll sort everything out. I knew better than to believe him. The moment we were alone, the facade of civility would drop. But I also knew there was no winning this battle. Not here, not now. Not with Victor's men present, and Father Thomas's safety at risk. As Victor extended his hand to me, I felt the walls of my cage reforming around me, invisible, but no less confining. I had escaped once. I would have to find a way to do it again. But next time, I would need to be smarter, more prepared. Next time I would need to disappear so completely that even Viktor Sokolov, with all his resources and determination, couldn't find me. For now, though, I placed my hand in his, suppressing a shudder at the familiar touch. His fingers closed around mine, firm and possessive. Say goodbye to the good father, Victor instructed, his tone making it clear it was not a suggestion. I looked back at Father Thomas, whose face was etched with concern and helplessness. Thank you, I said simply. For everything. As Victor led me down the aisle toward the doors, toward the waiting Bentley, toward the gilded cage that awaited me, I felt his thumb stroke the inside of my wrist. A gesture that had once made my heart race with desire, now made it race with dread. You and I have much to discuss, Alyosha, he murmured, his lips close to my ear, starting with why you thought you could ever leave me. The church doors closed behind us, and with them, my brief taste of freedom. The Bentley's interior was exactly as I remembered. Butter-soft leather seats, the subtle glow of ambient lighting, the faint scent of Victor's cologne lingering in the enclosed space. Dmitri held the door for us, his face an expressionless mask as I slid across the seat. Victor followed, sitting closer than necessary, his thigh pressed against mine in a deliberate show of possession. Home, Dmitri, he instructed, the partition rising silently between us and the driver. I stared straight ahead, my hands clasped tightly in my lap to hide their trembling. My wedding ring was long gone, pawned months ago to pay for my first month's rent on the tiny apartment that had been my refuge. The pale band of skin where it had once sat had finally faded, erasing that physical reminder of my time as Mrs. Sokolov. Yet here I was, being reclaimed as though I had never left. You look tired, Victor observed, his voice deceptively gentle. Have you been taking care of yourself, of our child? As best I can on a waitress's salary, I replied, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. He made a disapproving sound. This stubbornness has gone on long enough, Alessa. Look at you. Exhausted, working on your feet all day while carrying my child. This is beneath you, beneath us. There is no us anymore, I said quietly, still not looking at him. And I'd rather work honest hours than live off blood money. His hand shot out, gripping my chin and forcing me to face him. There was no violence in the touch, but the threat of it hung in the air between us. You know nothing about my business. I know enough, I countered, meeting his gaze despite the fear coursing through me. I know about the shipment that came in the night before I left. I know about the man who disappeared after refusing to pay his debts to you. I know what you are, Victor. His eyes narrowed, but he didn't deny any of it. And yet you had no problem enjoying the benefits of my work. The penthouse, the jewelry, the clothes. You never questioned where they came from until it suited you. The accusation stung because there was truth to it. I had suspected Victor's business wasn't entirely legitimate, but I'd chosen not to look too closely. I'd been young, dazzled by his attention, his generosity, the intensity of his devotion. By the time I realized the full extent of his operations, I was already trapped in his web. I was naive, I admitted, but I'm not anymore. He released my chin, his fingers trailing along my jaw in a gesture that was almost tender. My Alyosha, always so principled, his hand moved lower, coming to rest on my stomach, and now carrying the next generation of Sokolov. I flinched away from his touch, pressing myself against the car door. Don't. Something dangerous flashed in his eyes. But he withdrew his hand. You're upset. Understandable after our unexpected reunion tonight. We'll talk more when you've had time to rest. The city lights blurred outside the window as the Bentley glided through the rain-slicked streets. I recognized the route. We were heading toward Victor's penthouse in the exclusive riverfront district. The place I had once called home before I discovered the truth about the man I had married. I'm not staying with you, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I have my own place now. Victor's laugh was cold, devoid of humor. That pitiful apartment in the East End. I've seen it, Alessa. Peeling paint, unreliable heat, neighbors who play music until 3 a.m. That's no place for my wife. No place for my child. A chill ran through me. He'd known where I lived. All this time. He'd known. You've been watching me. Of course I have. He said it as though it were the most natural thing in the world. You are mine. Did you think I would simply let you go? I'm not a possession, Victor. No, he agreed, his voice softening. You're much more valuable than any possession. You're the mother of my child, the woman who will carry on my legacy. The car slowed as we approached the towering glass building that housed Victor's penthouse. The doorman rushed forward with an umbrella as Dmitri opened the car door. I remained seated, a final, futile resistance. Alessa! Victor's voice held a warning. Don't make a scene. Not here. I knew what he meant. In public, the Sokolovs were a respectable family. Any discord was to remain strictly behind closed doors. Victor's reputation depended on it. With reluctance, I allowed him to help me from the car, his hand firm on my elbow as we crossed the lobby. The night doorman nodded deferentially, his eyes widening slightly at the sight of me. The prodigal wife returned. Good evening, Mr. Sokolov, ma'am. He inclined his head respectfully, but I caught the curiosity in his gaze. Victor merely nodded in acknowledgement as he guided me toward the private elevator that led directly to the penthouse. Once the doors closed, sealing us in the small space, he turned to me. You will behave as my wife, he said, his voice low and controlled. In public and private, in every way that matters. Whatever foolish notions of independence you've developed during your absence, you will set them aside, for the sake of our child, if not for me. And if I don't? I challenged, a last spark of defiance. His smile didn't reach his eyes. You will, because deep down, you know this is where you belong, with me. The elevator doors opened directly into the penthouse foyer. The space was exactly as I remembered. Soaring ceilings, minimalist decor in shades of cream and gray, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. It had once felt like a dream home. Now it felt like an exquisitely designed prison. You've kept it the same, I observed, running my fingers along the marble console table where I used to leave my keys. I knew you would return eventually, Victor replied, removing his suit jacket and draping it over a chair. Would you like something to eat? You must be hungry after your shift. The casual domesticity of the question was jarring after everything that had transpired, as if I had simply been out for the evening, rather than having fled from him months ago. I'm not hungry, I lied, though my stomach growled traitorously. I had missed dinner in the chaos of our encounter. Victor raised an eyebrow, unconvinced. Sit down, Alessa. I'll have Irina prepare something light. Irina, Victor's housekeeper, a stern Russian woman who had never quite warmed to me during our marriage. I wondered what she thought of my return, whether she knew about Katrina, the woman in the red dress, Victor's fiancée. Where is she? I asked abruptly. Your fiancée, the woman from the restaurant. Victor's expression hardened. Katrina is no longer your concern. She seemed to think she was going to be your wife, I pressed. Does she know about your business, about what you really are? Or was she as blind as I was? He moved toward me, each step measured and deliberate. Enough, Alessa. What was between Katrina and me is over. It was a distraction, nothing more. A distraction with a diamond ring, I noted. She seemed quite invested in your honeymoon plans. Victor reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. I fought the urge to recoil from his touch. Jealousy doesn't suit you, Alyosha. You left me, remember? What did you expect me to do? Sit alone in our home, pining for your return? I expected you to sign the divorce papers I sent, I replied. The ones your lawyer returned without your signature. I will never divorce you, he said simply, as if stating an immutable fact. You are my wife, the mother of my child. This separation was a temporary madness on your part, nothing more. The casual dismissal of my agency, my choices, ignited a fresh wave of anger. It wasn't madness, Victor. It was self-preservation. I left because I was afraid of what would happen when I discovered the truth about you, about what you do. He studied me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. And what is it you think you know, Alessa? I hesitated, suddenly aware of how dangerous this conversation could become. What if I knew more than he thought? What if revealing the extent of my knowledge made me a liability? Enough, I said finally. I know enough. Victor nodded slowly, as if confirming something to himself. We'll discuss this tomorrow. Tonight, you need rest. He gestured toward the hallway that led to the master bedroom. Your things are still there. I kept everything exactly as you left it. The thought of sleeping in the bed we had once shared made my skin crawl. I'd prefer the guest room. His jaw tightened, but he nodded curtly. As you wish, for now. The guest room was at the opposite end of the penthouse from the master suite, a small mercy. Like the rest of the apartment, it was untouched since my departure. The same neutral bedding, the same minimalist furnishings. I closed the door behind me, leaning against it as exhaustion washed over me in waves. My hand moved to my stomach, a protective gesture that had become instinctive. I'm sorry, I whispered to the tiny life growing within me. I'm so sorry you've been born into this. A soft knock at the door made me jump. I opened it to find Irina standing there, her severe features betraying no emotion at my return. Mr. Sokolov asked me to bring you something to eat, she said, her Russian accent thick as she offered a tray with a bowl of soup and bread. Thank you, Irina, I said, taking the tray. Her eyes flickered to my stomach, then back to my face. You are with child, she observed. I nodded, uncertain how to respond. Irina had never been particularly warm toward me, viewing me, I suspected, as too American, too independent for a man like Victor. Good, she said simply. Mr. Sokolov needs an heir. She turned to leave, then hesitated. The other woman, she is gone now. You need not worry. Before I could ask what she meant by gone, Irina had disappeared down the hallway, leaving me with more questions than answers. I set the tray on the nightstand and sank onto the bed, my mind racing despite my exhaustion. What had happened to Katrina after we left the restaurant? Had Victor simply broken off their engagement? Or was there a more sinister explanation for Irina's cryptic words? I ate the soup mechanically, barely tasting it, my thoughts churning with possibilities for escape. Victor would be vigilant now that he had found me. The doorman would be instructed not to let me leave alone. My phone was likely already monitored. My few friends would be watched. And then there was the baby to consider. In less than 5 months, I would have a child. Victor's child. A Sokolov heir. He would never let us go, never allow his bloodline to be raised away from his influence and control. A soft buzz from my purse interrupted my spiraling thoughts. I retrieved my phone, expecting to see more messages from Victor. Instead, there was a text from an unknown number. Father Thomas gave me your number. This is Anna, his sister from Montana. He told me about your situation. When you're ready to leave, text this number. We'll help. Delete this message. A flicker of hope sparked in my chest. Someone was still willing to help me, despite the risk. I memorized the number, then deleted the message as instructed. Sleep eluded me that night. I lay in the too-soft bed, listening to the occasional footsteps in the hallway. Victor checking on me, or perhaps one of his men stationed outside my door. The gilded cage might be more comfortable than my shabby apartment, but it was a cage nonetheless. Morning came with pale sunlight filtering through the floor-to-ceiling windows. I had dozed fitfully, waking at every sound, my body tense and alert despite my exhaustion. When I finally gave up on sleep and ventured into the hallway, I found Victor in the kitchen, dressed in a casual black sweater and slacks, reading something on his tablet. He looked up as I entered, his gaze sweeping over me in my rumpled waitress uniform, the only clothes I had with me. "Good morning, Alyosha. Did you sleep well?" "Well enough," I lied, accepting the cup of tea he offered. The domestic normalcy of the scene was surreal after everything that had happened. "I've taken the liberty of having some of your things brought from your apartment," he said, gesturing to several shopping bags on the counter. "Fresh clothes, toiletries. Your neighbor was kind enough to let my men in, Mrs. Petrovich, my elderly neighbor who had a spare key for emergencies. I could imagine her intimidation when Victor's men appeared at her door. You had no right to go into my apartment." Victor's expression remained pleasant, but his eyes hardened. "You are my wife, Alessa. Your apartment, as you call it, was merely a temporary arrangement, a mistake that has now been corrected." I bit back a retort, knowing it would only provoke him. Instead, I picked up one of the bags and retreated to the guest room to change. Inside, I found not my own modest clothing, but new items with designer labels still attached: silk blouses, cashmere sweaters, tailored slacks. All in my size, all in the styles and colors Victor preferred me in, another subtle reminder of his control. When I returned to the kitchen in a simple blue dress from among the new clothes, Victor nodded approvingly. "Much better. Now you look like my wife again." "I'm not your wife," I said quietly. "Not really. Not anymore." He set down his tablet, giving me his full attention. "Let's be clear, Alessa. Legally, you are still Mrs. Victor Sokolov. You never filed for divorce. I never signed any papers. Our separation was unofficial. Because you refused to let me go," I countered. "I sent those papers 3 times. Your lawyer returned them each time without your signature." "Because divorce is not an option," he said simply, "especially not now." His gaze dropped meaningfully to my stomach. I placed my hand protectively over the small bump. "This baby doesn't change what happened between us. It doesn't erase what you are, what you do." "And what exactly is it you think I do, Alyosha?" He leaned forward, his voice dangerously soft. "You've made vague accusations about my business, about blood money. I'm curious what you believe you know." I hesitated, suddenly aware of the thinness of the ice beneath my feet. How much did I actually know, versus what I had pieced together from overheard conversations, from the sudden tension when certain names were mentioned, from the blood-stained shirt I'd found hidden in the back of the closet? "I know enough." I repeated my words from the night before. "I know that people who cross you disappear. I know that the police and judges in this city are in your pocket. I know that your import business brings in more than just luxury goods." Victor's expression remained impassive, giving nothing away. "You've been watching too many movies, Alessa. My businesses are legitimate, profitable, yes. Occasionally operating in gray areas, perhaps, but nothing that should send a pregnant woman running into the night." "Don't lie to me," I said, my voice shaking with suppressed anger. "Not anymore. I saw the blood, Victor. I heard the phone call about the man who needed to be taken care of. I'm not naive anymore." Something shifted in his eyes, not guilt or remorse, but a cold calculation. "And what if you're right? What if my business does occasionally require forceful negotiations? This is the real world, Alyosha. Power has a price. Protection has a price. Everything has a price." "Including me?" I asked bitterly. Was I just another acquisition? Another piece of property to be controlled and managed? He moved then, crossing the space between us with fluid grace. His hands came to rest on my shoulders, firm but not painful. "You were never property," he said, his voice softening. "You are the only person I have ever truly cared for, the only one who saw beyond the power and the money to the man beneath." I wanted to believe him. Some small, traitorous part of me remembered the early days of our relationship. His tenderness, his attentiveness, the way he had made me feel cherished and protected. Before I knew the truth, before I understood the cost of his protection. "If that were true," I said, meeting his gaze steadily, "you would let me go." His fingers tightened slightly on my shoulders. Never. The word was soft but absolute. Especially not now, not with my child growing inside you. I pulled away from his touch, needing distance. What happened to Katrina? The abrupt change of subject seemed to catch him off guard. What? Katrina, your fiancée. Irina said she's gone now. What did you do to her? Victor's laugh was genuine, if cold. You think I had her killed? For what purpose? She was a distraction, nothing more, a way to pass the time while I searched for you. Then where is she? On a plane to Paris, most likely, he replied with a dismissive wave. With a generous severance package and instructions never to contact me again. Unlike you, Alyosha, Katrina understood the value of discretion and obedience, the casual cruelty in his words, the implication that another woman had been nothing more than a placeholder until I was found, made my stomach turn. What kind of man treated people as such disposable commodities? And now what? I asked, wrapping my arms around myself. You expect us to play happy family? To pretend the last few months never happened? That I don't know what you are? Victor regarded me thoughtfully. What I expect is for you to accept reality, Alessa. You are my wife. You are carrying my child. Your place is here, with me. The rest, we can work through with time. And if I refuse? If I try to leave again? The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Then I will find you. Again and again. No matter where you go, no matter how far you run, and those who help you will suffer for it. His voice was calm, matter of fact, which made the threat all the more chilling. But it won't come to that, will it, Alyosha? Because deep down, you know this is where you belong. The days that followed settled into a strange pantomime of domestic life. Victor was unfailingly polite, even solicitous, ensuring I had everything I needed, arranging for a private doctor to check on the baby's progress, presenting me with thoughtful gifts that I never asked for. To an outside observer, we might have appeared the picture of reconciled marital bliss. The reality was far different. I remained in the guest room, a small act of defiance that Victor tolerated with thinning patience. There was always someone watching me. If not Victor himself, then Dmitri stationed in the lobby, or Alexei following at a discreet distance. When I was permitted short, supervised walks in the park across the street, my phone had been replaced with a new one that I was certain was monitored. The penthouse doors required a keycard to operate the elevator, which I was not given. A gilded cage, but a cage nonetheless. A week after my return, Victor announced over breakfast that we would be attending a charity gala that evening. It's time to reintroduce you to society, he said, sliding an embossed invitation across the table. People have been asking questions about your absence. What have you been telling them? I asked, pushing my barely touched eggs around the plate. That you were visiting family. He sipped his coffee, watching me over the rim of the cup. Tonight, we present a united front. The happy couple, expectant parents. You'll wear the blue Valentino. It will complement your eyes and still conceal your condition. We're not ready to make that announcement yet. The calm way he dictated my appearance, our public narrative, made something twist painfully in my chest. And if I refuse to go? Victor set down his cup with deliberate care. You won't. The unspoken threat hung in the air between us. I had learned quickly that direct defiance was met with subtle but effective consequences. Father Thomas being investigated for tax irregularities, my former landlord receiving a visit from health inspectors, my friend Sophia suddenly losing her job at Bellissimo. Victor never explicitly connected these events to my behavior. But the message was clear. Compliance meant protection. Not just for me, but for anyone who had shown me kindness. Fine, I conceded. I'll go. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Excellent. Elena will be here at 3 to help with your hair and makeup. I retreated to the guest room after breakfast, ostensibly to rest, but in reality to gather my thoughts. Each day that passed made escape seem more impossible. Victor's web extended throughout the city, his influence, his eyes and ears everywhere. Even if I managed to slip away, how far could I get before he found me again? The Montana option still flickered like a distant beacon of hope. Father Thomas's sister, Anna, had texted twice more, brief, encoded messages asking if I was safe, reminding me that help was available when I was ready. I had deleted each message immediately after reading it, afraid of what Victor might do if he discovered them. But I needed a plan, a real plan, not just desperate flight, money, identification, transportation, a way to disappear so completely that even Victor with all his resources couldn't find me, and I needed time to arrange it all under the constant surveillance. The charity gala might provide an opportunity. A crowded venue, multiple exits, people who weren't on Victor's payroll. If I could somehow slip away, a knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. I opened it to find Irina standing there, her perpetual stern expression slightly softened. "Mr. Sokolov asked me to bring you these," she said, holding out a velvet jewelry box, "for tonight." I took the box reluctantly, opening it to find a stunning sapphire necklace nestled on black velvet. New, not from my previous collection. Victor's way of marking his territory, of reminding both me and everyone at the gala exactly who I belong to. "Thank you, Irina." I moved to close the door, but she remained in place, her gaze darting down the hallway as if checking that we were alone. "Be careful," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "He is not the same since you left. More careful, more watching." I stared at her, surprised by this unexpected warning. "What do you mean?" Irina's weathered face revealed nothing. "The other woman?" She asked too many questions, about his business, about his friends. She was not just a fiancée, she was looking for information. My breath caught. "What kind of information?" "I do not know. But Mr. Sokolov discovered her true purpose." Irina's voice dropped even lower. "She did not go to Paris." A chill ran down my spine. "Where did she go?" Irina shook her head slightly. "It is better not to ask such questions. Better not to know." She straightened, resuming her professional demeanor. "Elena will be here at 3. I will prepare your dress." She turned and walked away, leaving me frozen in the doorway, the velvet box clutched in my suddenly cold hands. Katrina hadn't been sent away with a generous settlement. She had asked questions. She had been looking for information. And she had disappeared. I closed the door and sank onto the bed, my heart racing. Was Katrina an undercover police officer? A journalist? A spy for a rival organization? Whatever her true identity, it seemed she had gotten too close to something Victor wanted to keep hidden. And now she was gone. Would the same fate await me if I tried to leave again? Or worse, would it befall those who tried to help me, Father Thomas, his sister Anna, anyone connected to my escape? The realization settled over me like a shroud. I couldn't run. Not yet. Not without understanding exactly what I was dealing with, what secrets Victor was protecting. Not without ensuring that my escape wouldn't endanger others. For now, I would play the part of the reconciled wife. I would wear the blue Valentino and the sapphire necklace. I would smile at Victor's associates and laugh at their jokes. And all the while, I would watch and listen and wait for an opportunity. Elena arrived precisely at 3. A petite woman with nimble fingers and a talent for discretion. She styled my hair in an elegant updo, applied makeup that enhanced my features while drawing attention away from the shadows under my eyes, and helped me into the Valentino gown that Victor had selected, a deep, midnight blue that flowed gracefully over my small baby bump. "You look beautiful, Mrs. Sokolov," she said, stepping back to admire her work. I barely recognized the woman in the mirror, poised, elegant, every inch the mafioso's wife. The sapphire necklace gleamed at my throat, heavy and cold against my skin. "Thank you, Elena," I replied automatically. Victor appeared in the doorway, resplendent in a black tuxedo, his silver cufflinks catching the light. His gaze traveled over me, a small smile of satisfaction curving his lips. "Perfect," he said softly. "Every man at the gala will envy me tonight." "Is that all that matters to you?" I asked, keeping my voice low so Elena wouldn't overhear as she packed up her supplies. "How others see us. The perfect couple? The perfect life?" Victor moved closer, adjusting the necklace slightly so the largest sapphire rested in the hollow of my throat. "Perception is reality, Alyosha. How the world sees us shapes how they treat us. Never forget that." His fingers lingered on my skin, a possessive touch that made me suppress a shiver. Our car will be waiting downstairs in 20 minutes. Don't be late. He left, and I let out the breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Elena gave me a sympathetic glance as she closed her makeup case. Is there anything else you need, Mrs. Sokolov? I hesitated, then made a split-second decision. Actually, Elena, do you have a safety pin? This strap feels a bit loose. Of course. She dug through her case and produced a small safety pin, which I took gratefully. Thank you, for everything. Once she was gone, I quickly hid the safety pin in a small hidden pocket of the Valentino. It wasn't much of a weapon, but it was something. A tiny tool that might prove useful if an opportunity for escape presented itself. The charity gala was held at the Grand Meridian Hotel, a historic building in the heart of downtown. As our Bentley pulled up to the red carpet, photographers surged forward. Viktor Sokolov made rare public appearances, and his return with his formerly absent wife was evidently newsworthy. Victor's hand settled at the small of my back as we exited the car, guiding me possessively through the gauntlet of flashing cameras. Smile, Alyosha, he murmured close to my ear. Remember, perception is reality. I fixed a practiced smile on my face, allowing him to lead me into the opulent ballroom. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over the sea of designer gowns and tuxedos. A string quartet played softly in one corner. Waiters circulated with champagne flutes and canapes. Victor, we were beginning to think you'd become a hermit. A portly man with a florid face approached, champagne sloshing dangerously in his glass. And the lovely Mrs. Sokolov, back from her mysterious travels. You've been sorely missed at our gatherings, my dear. Thank you, Judge Harrison, I replied, the name coming back to me from previous events, one of the many city officials in Victor's pocket. It's good to be home. You must tell me all about your trip. Victor has been so secretive about where you've been hiding away. The judge's gaze was a bit too interested, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. Family matters, Victor interjected smoothly, very private. You understand, I'm sure. The judge nodded, taking the hint. Of course, of course. Well, you're just in time for the auction. Some remarkable pieces this year. As he moved away, Victor's grip on my waist tightened imperceptibly. Well done, he murmured. Keep it vague. Anyone who asks, you've been visiting your ailing mother. My mother is dead, I reminded him flatly. Has been for 10 years. They don't know that. His smile remained in place for the benefit of onlookers. Now, we need to make the rounds. The mayor is here, and the police commissioner. Both are expecting acknowledgement. For the next hour, Victor guided me through the crowd like a prize show dog, accepting congratulations on my return, deflecting questions about my absence, introducing me to people whose names I instantly forgot. I smiled until my cheeks ached, laughed at jokes that weren't funny, pretended not to notice the calculating look some of the women gave me, the ones who had likely consoled Victor during my travels. Through it all, I searched for potential escape routes. The main entrance was too public, too obvious. There was a service door near the kitchens, but it would likely be busy with staff. Fire exits would trigger alarms. And even if I made it out of the building, where would I go? How far could I get in an evening gown and 4-inch heels before Victor's men found me? Mrs. Sokolov? A voice at my elbow startled me from my planning. I don't believe we've met. Detective Claire Donovan. I turned to find a woman in a simple black dress extending her hand. Mid-30s, with intelligent eyes and a firm handshake. Not the usual type to be found at Victor's social circles. A pleasure, detective, I replied, noting how Victor had momentarily been drawn into conversation with the mayor several feet away. Are you enjoying the evening? It's certainly illuminating. Her smile was professional, her eyes assessing. I don't often get to see this side of the city's elite. I'm normally dealing with them in less glamorous circumstances. Oh, what department are you with? I asked, genuine curiosity piercing through my practiced socialite demeanor. Organized Crime Task Force, she replied, watching my reaction carefully. Newly formed. We're taking a more integrated approach to certain ongoing investigations. My heart began to race. Was this a coincidence? Or was Detective Donovan here specifically because of Victor? I glanced toward my husband, relieved to see he was still occupied. That sounds fascinating, I said, keeping my voice light. Though I imagine it must be dangerous work. It can be. She sipped her champagne, especially when targets are well connected, protected. Her gaze was direct, meaningful. Mrs. Sokolov, I wonder if you might... Darling, there you are. Victor's voice cut through our conversation as he materialized at my side. I see you've met Detective Donovan, one of the city's finest. The change in atmosphere was immediate and palpable. Though Victor's tone remained cordial, there was an underlying current of tension that hadn't been there moments before. We were just getting acquainted, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. The detective was telling me about her work. Fascinating stuff, I'm sure. Victor's smile was cold, though perhaps not appropriate conversation for a charity event. I'm certain the detective understands the importance of context. Detective Donovan held his gaze without flinching. Perfectly, Mr. Sokolov. Context is everything in my line of work. She turned to me. It was a pleasure meeting you, Mrs. Sokolov. Perhaps we'll have the opportunity to continue our conversation another time. As she walked away, Victor's fingers dug painfully into my waist. What did she want? He demanded, his voice low. Nothing, I replied. Small talk. She approached me, not the other way around. Victor's eyes narrowed as he watched Detective Donovan disappear into the crowd. Stay away from her. She's dangerous. To me or to you? I couldn't help asking. His gaze snapped back to me, sharp as a blade. To our family. To everything we have. His hand moved to rest possessively over my stomach. Remember what's at stake, Alyosha. The threat was clear. My baby, our baby, was as much a hostage to my good behavior as I was. I need to use the restroom, I said, needing a moment away from his suffocating presence. Victor hesitated, then nodded. Don't be long. The auction starts in 15 minutes. I made my way through the crowd toward the ladies' room, hyper-aware of Alexei's gaze following me from his position near the bar. Victor was giving me space, but not freedom. The restroom was blessedly empty when I entered. I leaned against the marble counter, taking deep breaths to steady myself. Detective Donovan's appearance couldn't be coincidence. The organized crime task force had to be investigating Victor. Was she the reason Katrina had disappeared? Had Katrina been working with the police? As I was lost in thought, the door opened. Detective Donovan walked in, checking quickly over her shoulder before letting the door swing shut. Mrs. Sokolov, she said quietly, I apologize for the intrusion, but I needed to speak with you privately. My pulse quickened. My husband has men watching me. If they see us talking, I know, this will only take a moment. She moved closer, keeping her voice low. We're building a case against Viktor Sokolov. Money laundering, extortion, racketeering, and murder. The word hung in the air between us. Murder. The confirmation of my worst fears about the man I had married. Why are you telling me this? I whispered. Because we believe you're in danger. Her gaze was direct, unflinching. The woman your husband was seeing during your absence. Katrina Reynolds. She's missing. She went to Paris, I said automatically, repeating Victor's lie. Detective Donovan shook her head. No, she didn't. Katrina Reynolds was an informant. She was feeding us information about your husband's operations. And then 3 days ago, she disappeared. The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. Irina's cryptic warning echoed in my mind. She did not go to Paris. What do you want from me? I asked, my voice barely audible. Information. Testimony. Protection for you and your child. She reached into her clutch and palmed me a small business card, which I instinctively slipped into my hidden pocket alongside the safety pin. We can help you, Mrs. Sokolov, but you need to help us first. The bathroom door began to open. Detective Donovan immediately moved to the sink, turning on the water as if she'd just been washing her hands. A young woman in a red gown entered, giving us a cursory glance before disappearing into a stall. Think about it, Detective Donovan murmured as she dried her hands. You know where to find me. She left, and I remained frozen by the counter, my mind racing. Police protection. A way out from under Victor's thumb. But at what cost? If Victor discovered I was talking to the police, what would happen to me? To our baby? To anyone who tried to help me? I returned to the ballroom to find Victor scanning the crowd, his expression darkening when he spotted me. He crossed to me in long strides, taking my elbow in a grip that was just shy of painful. "You were gone too long," he said, his voice tight with suppressed anger. "The auction is about to begin." "I'm sorry," I said automatically. There was a line. His eyes searched mine, looking for signs of deception. Whatever he saw must have satisfied him, because he relaxed his grip slightly. "Come. Our table is near the front." As he led me through the crowd, I was acutely aware of the business card burning a hole in my hidden pocket. A lifeline, perhaps, or a death sentence. Either way, a decision I would have to make soon. The auction passed in a blur. Victor bid generously on several items, a show of philanthropy that the crowd applauded appreciatively. Unaware of the blood money behind each bid, I sat beside him, the perfect supportive wife, while my mind spun with possibilities and dangers. Detective Donovan, Father Thomas's sister in Montana. 2 potential escapes, each with their own risks. If I cooperated with the police, I might finally be free of Victor, but only if they could build a case strong enough to put him away. If I fled to Montana, I might disappear entirely, but for how long? How far would Victor's reach extend? Would I spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder, waiting for him to find me again? And what about our child? What future could I give a baby born into such circumstances? The gala ended shortly before midnight. As we rode back to the penthouse in the Bentley, Victor seemed pleased with the evening's outcome. "You did well tonight," he said, his hand resting possessively on my knee. "Everyone was convinced by your performance." "Is that what our life is now?" I asked quietly. "A performance?" He studied me in the dim light of the car's interior. "It's a transition period, Alyosha. You've been away. Things have changed. It will take time for us to find our rhythm again. And if we don't? If I can never be the wife you want again?" His expression hardened. "You will be. For our child's sake, if nothing else." His hand moved to my stomach, a gesture that should have been tender but felt like a claim of ownership. "This baby changes everything. You understand that, don't you? There is no leaving now. There is only our family, our future." I turned to look out the window at the city lights blurring past. In the reflection of the glass, I could see Victor watching me, his expression a mixture of possession and something that might have been concern. "I understand," I said softly, and I did. I understood that Victor would never let me go willingly, that he would hunt me to the ends of the earth if I tried to take his child away, that anyone who helped me would be in danger. I understood that Detective Donovan was offering a way out, but at a terrible risk, that testifying against Victor would mean entering witness protection, living a life of constant vigilance, of looking over my shoulder for the rest of my days. I understood that I had decisions to make, impossible choices with life-altering consequences, for myself, for my baby, for anyone caught in the crossfire of my fight for freedom. As the Bentley pulled up to our building, Victor helped me out of the car with the same possessive courtesy he had shown all evening. His hand at the small of my back guided me through the lobby, into the private elevator, up to the penthouse that was both sanctuary and prison. "Get some rest," he said as we entered the foyer. "You look tired." I nodded, already moving toward the guest room, eager to be alone with my thoughts. "Alessa." His voice stopped me. I turned to find him watching me with an intensity that made my breath catch. "The guest room arrangement has gone on long enough. Tomorrow, you move back to our bedroom. Your place is with me." It wasn't a request. It was a command, wrapped in the trappings of concern. "Victor, this isn't negotiable," he cut me off. "You are my wife, the mother of my child. It's time you remembered that in every way." I said nothing, unable to trust my voice. I simply nodded and continued to the guest room, closing the door behind me with shaking hands. Once alone, I retrieved Detective Donovan's card from my pocket, staring at the embossed letters and the phone number. In my other hand, I held my phone, the one Victor had given me, the one he almost certainly monitored. I couldn't call from this phone, couldn't risk any contact that might alert Victor, but I needed to make a decision, and soon. The walls were closing in, my options narrowing with each passing day. As I stood there, torn between impossible choices, my baby kicked for the first time. A flutter of movement so slight I might have imagined it, but I knew it was real. Knew it was my child making its presence known, reminding me that whatever decision I made would affect not just my life, but this innocent life I carried. "I promise," I whispered, my hand cradling my small bump. "I promise I'll keep you safe, whatever it takes." The promise hung in the quiet room. A vow I wasn't sure how to keep, but one I would die trying to fulfill. Somehow I would find a way out of Victor's web. For myself, for my baby, for the future we both deserved. I slipped Detective Donovan's card into the lining of my jewelry box, the one place Victor might not think to look, and began to plan my next move. The game had changed, the stakes raised. But I was no longer the naive young woman who had fallen for Victor's charm and power. I was a mother fighting for her child's future, and I would not lose.